Hello, everyone.
Wow,
And
you
welcome
waited.
to the Woman's Cave.
Wait.
Now I can talk to you. What?
Wait, but you don't have lipstick on.
Yeah,
So,
no.
So she got it today, y'all, but she forgot to put on her lipstick. So I still feel like I'm winning.
I'll forget you.
I feel like
moving on.
I feel like the win is happening for Jade today on this Friday.
I feel like whenever someone sits over there, they have the most amount of shade. This is the effective shade corner. Whenever I'm over there, yeah, I can throw effective shade. Like, but when I'm here, I can't even.
Because you're in the limelight. Because you're in the limelight.
I need to be here every time. That's the narcissist. By the way, I'm Winona.
And I'm Jade. Why do I do this with you?
I don't understand, but it's fun nevertheless.
The things you do for your friends.
So people, please stick with me as I go through my bum date because I have on no lipstick and eyeshadow.
Yeah, but it's okay because it's Friday, y'all. I mean, seriously, to get up and put on lipstick like almost every day of the pandemic is a thing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's not a good thing. It's just a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Okay. So anyway, we wrote literary life guides with pop poetry. Although I have to tell y'all what happened this week.
Oh, right.
We actually got a #1 book. Thanks to like our people that came out and supported us. We were #1 in Amazon and the poetry anthologies
for 2 days.
For 2 days, y'all. And I just thank y'all for coming out and like supporting our new book. That's amazing. Which is, by the way, which is the Women's Cave and Other Pop Poems and Misfit Guide. Okay, but we, although it said anthology, we don't like to call them anthologies. No, we like to call them literary life guides with pop poetry. Doesn't that sound better? It just rolls off the tongue. It just rolls off the tongue and makes you want to buy it, right? So, okay, here are the top 4. Or I guess I already said 1, but so 5, I guess now, right? So, and I thought divorce was bad. Stop touching my set. Other life lessons. And I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me. And I thought I did my journey alone.
If Only I Were Me is the only one that's available only on Barnes and Noble.
Right. So you can check out everything your ladies are doing. I mean, all the other books and magazines and everything we have going on www.andwethought.com. We have a wonderful co-host today. With our shirt that's amazing on.
Would you like to show the shirt?
You have to show the shirt. Would you like to introduce your
shirt? My name is Tanya Todd. I'm an author, actress, and screenwriter, but all of that is storytelling and writing. So I am happy to be here. Thank you for letting me help you interview this amazing guest we have.
I know. But she had a good segue. So we need to let her have that segue. Wonderful guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Francesca Rheannon. I'm the host and producer of Writer's Voice, which is a book show that has been on the air since 2004 and has been podcasting since 2006. I remember the days when I had to tell people what a podcast. I actually created a brochure to tell people what a podcast is because it was unknown. So I've been doing that for a very long time, and I actually did it because I was writing a book that I wanted to learn how to read into a mic as an audiobook, and I fell into radio and just loved it, and now 16 years later I'm still doing it.
So can I ask, did you ever pursue the audiobook narration section of your course?
Not of this book, but I actually finally, this book went through about 150 million edits. It took about 12 years to write, and it's done, and it is now in the hands of something called a book Sherpa, a lovely person who doesn't define herself as an agent, but is working on marketing my book, which is a kind of memoir / book about values to live by. So it's not too far from where you guys put your stuff in, the field that you write in.
Absolutely. Well, I guess you could borrow Literary Life Guide if you wanted to.
I could.
You can borrow it if you want.
It's not a memoir. It's a literary life guide.
Literary life guide. I love that. Yeah, it's kind of a funny. It's kind of an interesting story. Are you up for a story?
We're always up for a story.
Okay. Well, I didn't grow up with my real father, but I found out just after he died that he died. He was Dutch, and I went to Holland to his funeral. I kind of, spoke to him a little bit over the years, but I didn't really know him. And when I went to his funeral, I found, I met a man who had been with him during the war in Holland. And I began to find out their story. And it turned out that my father was in the resistance against the Nazis, and he had sheltered a German Jewish man in his apartment for 3 years during the war. And I became completely obsessed with his story and began to work on this book about him. And I went to this, I found somebody been part of his group during the war who lived in the south of France in a beautiful, beautiful village in Provence, who invited me to come there and write my book about my father. And then 9/11 happened, just as I was about to go on the plane to Europe.
Oh.
And when I got there, I just felt like, who cares about World War II? Who's going to read a book? You know, it's not true. People do read them now.
Right, but the feeling at the time was this isn't what's important to
exactly.
right now.
It's just like everything changed. And I fell into a deep depression and began to just keep a diary every day, which is a good thing to do if you're a writer or even if just as a human being. I lived in this tiny little village of 100 people. And while the world was going insane around us, I met a shepherd who was shepherding in the old way, and all the neighbors took care of each other. And there was the guy in the middle of the village who had a hen house, and people would bring their, you know, their used vegetables to the hen house, and then he would give us all eggs. Everything worked together in this little village in one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And people always got together to gather things, to have fun, to create wonderful meals. And it's just the way people just have been doing things like this for like what, hundreds of thousands of years, really, right?
Testament to
That's
true
true.
community.
Bartering has been the way.
That bartering, community,
Yeah.
conviviality, conversation, and it healed me. And I realized, you know, not only is this the way to live, I mean, these are the true values, but it was also the way my father had totally dedicated his life to creating the same kind of community. And it was through my experience in Provence that I got to really know his story, not the facts of it, but how he lived his life and why he lived his life the way he did. And so I wrote a memoir when I came back that kind of featured all these different people that I'd met and the thoughts that I'd had and all the things that I'd found and more about my father. And should I ignore that or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
okay. So it's going to go on for a little while. That's an agent, actually.
What? Oh, wait. We're pausing this recording.
Not an agent for my book. It's a publicist. I mix them up. It's a publicist. I get calls from them all the time. So I wrote that, and it's just turned into a book that I really like, and I'm really hoping to share it someday and get it published. Thinking I'll self-publish it if I can't find any other way, because it's very hard to get published. You guys are really phenomenal with what you do.
What's self-published? We're indie authors.
Yeah, okay, so you are self-published. Well, you're doing really well.
Thank you. I think Tanya's going to be the only one of us that's traditionally published, which we'll be so happy for it, and we'll like drink champagne in her honor.
That's great. Well, it is very, very hard. But on the other hand, I started doing this radio show because I had taped so many conversations and I had so many sounds from Provence and the sheep bells, which I really loved. And I just thought I could create a really audio book. And I asked somebody, how do you learn how to talk on mic? And they said, hey, you can join our UMass community and student college radio station, one of the best longest, most illustrious college and community radio stations in the country, WMUA, and I did. And then when I moved, I joined another radio station, which I'm still connected to, which is WPKN out of Bridgeport, Connecticut, which has also been around for about 60 or 70 years. It's terrific
Bridgewater,
station.
Connecticut? Bridgeport, Connecticut.
No, I don't live. I live in Eastern Long Island, but our whatever you call it, the area, broadcast area includes Eastern Long Island. So that's my story.
And she's sticking to it.
And what a great story that is. I mean, wow. Get to experience community and kind of walk in your father's footsteps. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just jealous you got to live in the south of France.
Right. True. A little bit.
Oh my God. I mean, the place that I felt most at home in my life. But then as my final chapter says, the book is called Province of the Heart, because province of the heart. What I really discovered is that the values that I learned, really how to live is something you just carry with you everywhere. And your home is wherever you are. I learned how to eat. And I don't mean just cook, I mean eat.
Had a meal.
A meal, like a king, yeah.
When, fresh ingredients with other people, with conversation, with a sense of appreciation for the whole thing, that's eating.
I think that like you learn that in Europe, just like in general, like you learn how to eat and then not to rush, right? Because normally, and it's really funny because in Europe, they're like, oh, you're American, that's why you're done in like 30 minutes. And then like, because literally you need to be here for like 2 hours and you need to eat and enjoy it and laugh and have another bottle of wine and to do, and it's a very fun thing to learn though. And I think we have done a lot of that now because we're in our house, but I'm glad we had to learn that lesson before to be like, oh no, a meal could literally last 2 hours and 4 bottles of wine later. Why not?
Every day. I mean, when I don't know if they still do it, but when I was in France, everybody came home in the midday for a 2-hour lunch. I mean, that's what you did. It's just, I remember I went into a garage. I had to get my car fixed. I borrowed a car and went into a garage, and there on the wall was this, list of important things to do in life, basically. And I turned to the guy and I said, well, those are great lessons. And he said, well, where are you from? I said, I'm from America. He said, well, in America, and he said, in France, we live to work. No, in America, you live to work. In France, we work to live. But really, we Americans can learn the same thing too. And I think in a way with the pandemic, I wonder if many people have been learning to slow down and to think and to consider what life is like. And I may be making a big step here, but I think that has something to do with why so many people joined Black Lives Matter, because what they saw is, wait a second, people are getting killed for no reason at all. These are people who are often the least protected in terms of they have to be working because they can't afford to stay home and, telecommute or whatever it is. And there was all this support for frontline workers, for essential workers. And many essential workers are, not your white upper class folks. And then somebody gets killed and you see it, and it just felt to me like all those things really came together, that people had it. That's what happens when you take time to slow down. You actually get connected to real life.
And I say that, but I haven't seen any evidence that you have slowed down during the pandemic.
Right?
Has your work been affected by the pandemic or just the events of this year in general?
This year, because I'm one of those people who can do work by Zoom. So in fact, I can slow down so much because also there was that, a little thing called the election.
Say that again, it was a little muffled.
Yeah, you get a little muffled.
Oh, it was that little thing called the election, So I did a lot of phone banking and texting and, trying to get the vote out. Because for me, I just feel like part of paying attention is paying attention to the danger that we're in the world. We're in a lot of crises and they're all kind of interlinked. And so I just felt this election was a do or die thing, that if we didn't get rid of, I hope I'm not insulting any of your listeners, but I felt like if we didn't get rid of the man who was in the White House, we were facing serious survival issues.
Well, I do appreciate that you're an activist. I mean, it's very clear from everything that you do. And I'm curious what steers you toward the causes that you support and what prompted you to use your platform to assist them.
Mm. Well, I can say in the short term, my granddaughter motivates me. She's 16. She told me last year she doesn't think she has a future.
Mm.
She's been very aware of the climate issue since she was about 7 years old. And, I think of her in everything that I do. I do it for her. But on the other hand, this has been my life since I was way younger than you guys. When I was 17, I joined the anti-war movement, back the anti-Vietnam War movement, and that kind of showed me, that there were certain powers in the world that were not fair, and that American democracy really needed to be boosted by participation and activism. And so I've been kind of dedicated to that ever since then.
Oh, so you mentioned at the beginning you had a brochure to explain what a podcast was. What did that brochure include? I just want to know because curious minds. Like I have to know now. I have to know.
Oh, wow. I should have looked for it. I probably have it somewhere. Um, what we explained is it was because you had you had TiVo. What we said is it was like TiVo for radio. You could
Oh.
listen anytime you wanted by going online. That it was basically online radio that you could listen to anytime you wanted, and you could subscribe to it so that you could, get it into an app. I'm not even sure there were apps then, though. Well, there had to be. There was RSS. So yeah, there were some pretty You'd put in your RSS. You'd put in a complicated kind of RSS thing. Do you guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would be able to subscribe. Yeah, it wasn't all
Like that is so interesting because I just wanted to say because before the world like shut down, we had a whole form letter to explain what platform we recorded this on, and it's called Zoom. And yes, you're gonna ask what is a Zoom, and let me explain what it is. And so now though it's on, and they go, people write us back. We assume it's on Zoom. Absolutely, and that's it. Like absolutely, that's it. They're like link, password, thank you.
That's it.
That's
I had Zoom on my stuff because of my interview with you. You introduced me to Zoom all those years ago.
right. And it was years ago, and everyone was like, "What is a Zoom?"
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was kind of new for me too. I'd been looking for, I used to do all my interviews through what's called a telephone hybrid. If I weren't it wasn't in the studio, and there were just endless technical problems with it. You're hooking up a bunch of different stuff, and the phone signals were really bad, and they got worse and worse because phone companies just stopped investing in good audio, and then they went all to basically a kind of internet protocol audio, so it was even worse than the original. And then Zoom happened. The audio was so way better, and then all the the big NPR and all those guys who used to use I forget what it's called now, but they used this. If they had to phone in, it's like $100 an hour. The cost. If I wanted to go to a station and do an interview, I'd have to pay $100 an hour for such high quality audio. Well, now they all do, basically degraded audio because everybody's zooming everywhere. And so the standard, the audio got better, but the standards got lower. And so we all met in the middle. And now it's so much easier to do, podcasts and interviews.
Yeah, and that's been real fun for us to see that transformation.
And it had to be fun for you to see the transformation from not knowing what a podcast is to I can't miss my podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, why did you use your platform and your radio skills to give writers a voice out of everybody, that all the arts you could have given a voice to writers?
Well, I figured if I gave writers a voice, I'd learn a little bit about how the publishing industry worked, and I would get to know publicists and maybe even agents. It didn't quite work out that. I mean, I did get to know how it worked. And even in the beginning, I was doing more, like was interviewing publicists and interviewing agents, and it was more about kind of the business of writing. But really, I just love to read. And I love to talk to people about their books. And this way, I get to talk to authors whose work inspires me, and about, about whose work I have a lot of questions. And, my father was very dedicated to the art of conversation. In fact, way before any, he kind of did a kind of rudimentary podcasting, because he used to um, record. I mean, he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, hundreds of audio tapes. He would record phone conversations. He would record conversations that he had with people. He was, to him, he was not into chit chat. Everything had to be, a conversation about something that was interesting. And I inherited those tapes when he died. Many of them are in German and in Dutch, but there are also many that are in English, because English was his favorite language. So, and he would send them around to people. He had an idea that he was going to create a kind of internet of audio. I mean, the internet hadn't been invented then. And he would record these interviews and send them to people, and then they would add their comments and send them on to other people. It never happened, but it was a great idea, and the world caught up to him.
That's amazing. Tanya, do you have another question? Because I sure do, but I don't want to be the person that hugs this all.
It's your show. Yeah, I have a ton of questions. Since we were talking about writer's voice, it says that you welcome writers of all genres, but the recent topics feel very thought-provoking and academic. Do you truly welcome all genres? And then is your audience open to that? Because,
That's a good question. Yes.
That includes comics, graphic novels, erotica, that kind of stuff.
Yes. I've been more focused because of the election, and it just seemed like I wanted to use my platform to spread ideas in that way. But yeah, graphic novels, I've done a lot of, but then they've been a certain kind of graphic novel too. Like I interviewed, oh God, this is where when you interview a million people, he wrote Mouse.
I know who you're talking about.
You know who I mean?
Because you said graphic novels of a certain kind, I was like, she's talking about Mouse.
Yeah. And others. I mean, I've interviewed those. I've interviewed filmmakers. I've interviewed screenwriters. There's only one genre I have, and I've interviewed a lot of science fiction, a lot of detective novels, authors. I just interviewed Anthony Horowitz, who was the guy who did, Moriarty, all those the British TV things, Foyle's War. Romance novels. I have not interviewed any romance novelists.
We know
some.
If you ever want to get into it, we know some.
And I recognize there was a lack of poetry there.
And
too.
also, if ever you want some top poets.
I have definitely interviewed poets, but not enough. I have interviewed poets though. Absolutely. And some really, really wonderful ones. My good friend Catherine Levy, who is my partner in political action here, is also a wonderful poet. I've interviewed her. I interviewed, oh my goodness, oh gosh, I have interviewed a lot of well-known poets, actually, even some poet laureates. Nikki Giovanni, did I interview her? Yes, I believe I did. There's a bunch of anthologies that are wonderful of poetry that I've interviewed people from, but I could do more. You guys are pointing out my weaknesses, and in fact,
we were making a joke, because there was the joke of us saying, "Oh, if ever you want some pop poetry, we'll gladly come on," and that was us being funny.
Absolutely. I would love to interview you guys about your work. I just think what you're doing is great and it's an inspiration. So yeah. Is there anything I've left out there?
No. I mean, well, Tanya knows the name of the person that you were talking about. Tanya,
I didn't want to interrupt. It's Art Spiegelman.
Art Spiegelman, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
It is available in an archive, correct?
Some of the early ones are not, but I can send it to you if it's not.
Oh yes, please do.
All right, so now that we're on that subject, where can people check out your podcast and more about you?
No, I just want to say the podcast page for your website is a lesson to all podcasters, because I'm not a big podcast person, mainly because I don't know where to find them. When a host says something like, you can find my podcast wherever you usually listen to podcasts. Okay, what about people who don't usually listen to them? Now you've just put the onus on the potential listener to do the work and seek out where to find this podcast. And most people don't want to go through all that work. So you make it so easy to find. You break it down. There are 3 ways that you can find this podcast: A, B, or C. Here are the steps for each one. So thank you.
Well, I have to say that comes out of the fact that the podcast is started in 2006 when people didn't know. And I have to give a shout out to Bill Way, who was my my webmaster, and he built a really beautiful website. Yeah, I really do like it. Been using it a long time.
Where is that website?
So you can find it at www.writersvoice.net. And oh no, I don't have it.
Yes.
But you can Google Writer's Voice with Francesca Rheannon, and you can also find it.
Can we buy the cup?
Is there a cup?
I think so. Nobody ever did. I'll send you a link.
Oh no, we're big into buying cups. I mean, we have our own entire brand of of cups. So we like to buy other people's cups to go with it.
I do.
Like a writer collection.
My morning coffee, I'm like, yes, I'm a writer. Yes, I am. Yeah,
I would be honored. Totally. Well, Tanya, you've been a screenwriter. That's pretty interesting.
That happened this year. I wasn't a screenwriter last year.
Oh no, I remember when you became a screenwriter. Yeah. I do.
Is that difficult to do?
Any art that is worth doing is difficult if you're trying to do it well, but you just have to learn the basics first, and then you have to practice.
And what was the screenplay that you wrote?
It's based on my unpublished manuscript. So the first one I wrote was an adaptation of that. So then that's the pain of gutting your novel and taking out all these details that you work so hard to put into it, cutting out characters that are no longer essential when it's just a 90-minute movie, Wow. And then I ended up co-writing a short film with B. Danielle Watkins over the summer, because we were supposed to do a movie together and that couldn't happen because of the pandemic. And so we wrote something that could be filmed at home, each actor filming their stuff at home. And that has already been filmed, actually.
Oh, wow. Is it released?
No, they're going to do the festival with it, and it's still in editing.
Well, let me know.
Well, if we do a screening, I will absolutely let you know.
Yeah.
And then I'm writing a vampire film right now, but I put that on hold for NaNoWriMo because I'm working on another novel for this month.
Oh. How's it going, Tanya? I mean, I know this is...
Oh, it's slow. It's so slow. I'm behind. But you know what? I've done more than I would have if I hadn't just devoted this month to it. And part of the reason it's slow going is because of the crazy opportunities that have landed in my lap. It's like, haha, you thought you were going to be productive here? You're going to be productive here. It's not a bad problem to have. I'm not complaining.
Can you send some of that our way?
I know, just send some.
Oh, stop.
So, Tanya,
you're the reason for all of my opportunities, basically.
So, Tanya, while you're speaking, though, where can people find out more about you?
Can I ask her 2 more questions before we do that?
Absolutely, you can, but
be very quick.
Keep in mind, I haven't eaten lunch.
Okay. So, Francesca, you're a lifelong bibliophile. What have you read this year that you recommend? What are you reading now? That's my first question.
What am I reading now? This is a book I'm reading now. The Book of Unconformities. Is that the right way?
Yes.
Speculations on Lost Time. Hugh Raffles is a wonderful writer who his last book was called Insectopedia. He's a naturalist, but he's also a really, really beautiful writer. So it kind of combines two of my loves, natural history and good writing. So he's really terrific. This is an amazing book. Nicole Krauss, To Be a Man. This is a collection of one of the best short story collections I've read. Really, To Be a Man. She's a woman who is really exploring notions of gender, and not only in the sense of how, what it's like to be a man, but also what it's like to be a woman in relationship to men, in whatever relationship that may be. That's really very good. This one I love. I mean, when it comes to climate, these are all the future Earth. What I liked about this book is it's a vision for what we could have, how we can get in the next 30 years from this, planet that's on the verge of collapse to one that is where we can all thrive, not only survive and thrive. So Eric
leads me to my last question, which is, do you still think a better world is possible?
Absolutely. I mean, a better world, it's up to us. We can do it. We have the answers. We know how to live together. In fact, another really great thing that I'm reading is Humankind by Rutger Bregman, where he writes about, humankind. He writes about how we got to where we are because for the hundreds of thousands of years that we lived in before we invented civilization, we lived in community, we lived in cooperation, we lived in kindness. That's, in fact, was probably our evolutionary advantage over the Neanderthals, is that we actually were a cooperative species. So we need to get back to solidarity. And if we can redefine how we live in solidarity with each other, we can have a beautiful world, and one in which all those beautiful other creatures that we share the world with can thrive as well.
That's lovely.
Thank you for asking those questions, Tanya.
Yes, absolutely. And now it's time for you to say, Tanya, where people can find you.
I'm available across social media at Ms. Tanya Todd, and my website is www.mstanyatodd.com.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're going to have our guest say it one more time when you can find out everything about her and her podcast.
Me?
Yes.
www.writersvoice.net, all one word, Writer's Voice. And also you can find links to my other work, some of my writing there as well. And I've also read out some chapters from my book on that website. I can send you those links too if you want.
Absolutely. I mean, we're huge on hearing audio books. We're huge on it. We're huge on it. That's how we get so much work done and still listen to all and read all our books we want to get done.
Yep.
Audiobooks. Thank you so much for both people to join us, our guests to join us, and our co-host Tanya Todd to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Shade, would you like to wrap up?
Absolutely. You can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com. While you're there, check out the Ladies Tale podcast. It will be soon in episode 3 up, which is so fantastic. And you can also check out the Women's Cave.
So fantastic. We had to do it twice.
So fantastic. You had to do it twice. So, and you can also find the Women's Cave there, our #1 best-selling in Amazon. I mean, it really feels good to say that. It feels accomplished. Feels accomplishment is coming, right? Anyway, but more importantly than all of that, go to the ladies tab, go down to the middle and see the charities that we probably support. Maybe you cannot support you can support them monetarily. If you cannot do that, that's okay. You can support them with volunteering your time. If you can't do that, that's okay too. Just add them on social media and say some nice words like, thank you for doing the wonderful work that you do in the world. Or email them and say, thank you for doing this wonderful work that you're in the world. We would really appreciate it. And just remember that wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Will No.
And Jay, bye-bye. Oh, yeah, thanks for listening.